The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Globalization Show, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about living and working in a world where the wired, tired, and technology converge. I'm your host, Ira Wolf, along with my co-host, Keith Compagna, and our sponsors today are JobVite and Success Performance Solutions. We are going international again today. Our guest is Maja Ninkovic from Alathea RNS. We'll find out what that means. She'll be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and Keith's as well, the user experience. This is like being a kid in a candy store talking about people analytics and user experience and candidate experience. This isn't the run-of-your-mill stuff either. Just on Maya's website, she talks about things like eye tracking and user video graphics and ethnographics. This is like way, way different. I mean, I'm not sure when HR ever thought that they'd be talking about these things, but it's a must in today's war. It's not even a war for talent; it's a race for talent. So we're going to talk about how users see and experience digital content. And that includes your job descriptions, your job listings, job postings, career websites, video, what you're using, things for employee engagement, just about it all. And also we're going to be talking about the upcoming Disrupt HR event. I know Keith's familiar with that as well as myself. Maja's company and Maja is hosting that in Belgrade, Serbia, since she's coming, that's where she lives, in just about 3 weeks. So we'll be bringing on Maja in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, Keith, good to see you. I haven't seen you in 24 hours, right?
How about it? Yes. How's everything coming along and sounding good or better?
Yeah. Definitely better. Yeah, we had little technical difficulties. We're actually in 3 different locations today. Maja, as I said, is in Serbia. Keith is back in home in Lehigh Valley, and I'm in Sarasota. So we're moving my mother out of her apartment into another apartment today. She's moving into a community, independent. She'll still be independent living, but moving to an independent living community. It's a good move. A lot more people around, and if she needs some help, she is 95, so she's entitled to do that. But Keith, we have to. We definitely need to find someone who can talk about this is beyond the aging workforce, but here I am moving my 95-year-old mother. We got a 93-year-old father-in-law who's still living at home independently. But I said this to someone yesterday who's in their 50s, and he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "I'm dealing with my parents and his grandparents." So you have
kids,
people that, well, yeah, I mean that's the sandwich generation. But you're talking about our life cycles are now, our life expectancy is now good. I mean, it is good, and there's a lot longer quality of life. But here you have, people in their 50s and early 60s that are, typically, 30, 40, 50 years ago, they retired and they died. I remember when I first started my first practice in the 80s. People would come because they were retiring and they wanted to get all their dental work done. And for those that didn't know, that was my prior career. But they wanted to come and get it done. And unfortunately, within just a few years, they passed away in their 60s and 70s. Now, it's not really unusual to find multiple relatives living into their 90s, even into the hundreds. That used to be the exception. But think about the toll. Think about what what that's doing, because you have people in their 40s and 50s taking care of their parents in their 70s and 80s, and some of their parents is still alive, and if they're in their 40s and 50s, they may have young kids. Where they have kids in college who are starting they may be starting their families. It's got to take its toll on productivity.
Well, not only that, but it's something that comes up more often than not when I talk to groups about life-work integration. When we're dealing with balancing, the notion of balancing work and life has nothing to do with, it doesn't incorporate senior care, grandparent care, and it's becoming more and more of a turn on for people to find companies that are actually saying, if you have some member of your family you need to take care of, go take care of them. There, and in the conversations I have with clients and groups, it's that idea that there are organizations out there. Now is the time for you to take a deep breath, swallow the nerves that you might have, and put it out there so that you can align with a company that has a vision and a welcomed attitude towards this.
Sure, and people are still focused on childcare for sure, and there are some companies that have elder care, but even that alone is getting a little bit more complicated. And sometimes it's just flexibility. There's still companies that require people to show up and punch the clock, and yet there's some really talented people that are struggling with this, and maybe they're in a sandwich and maybe they're not, but they've got they've got aging parents or aging grandparents or aging relatives, and they may have kids at home, or they may even have a partner. I mean, it may even be their spouse who has got some health problems or disability, and they may not need. It may not even be a financial issue. It may be a work flexibility issue. So we definitely need to get somebody to talk about that. So on when you're out and about, and I'm this hit me not hard because we knew it was coming, but it's certainly something we want to be able to focus on and talk about. But yesterday we had a really nice group in the Lehigh Valley. We had 20 people in our seminar, Keeping Recruitment Human, and it's amazing. You were there. What were your thoughts? What did you hear? I saw it I saw it from the stage. You saw it from as a participant.
Well, first and foremost, it's always impressive when there isn't an empty seat in the room. So congratulations to you and Hugh. But the truth of the matter is, there isn't a single thought or a shared idea that you brought to the room that didn't have somebody writing down a note or nodding their head up and down in a yes motion. The content was right on. Everybody is dealing with a challenge in some varying degree on not only how do I create a different type of mindset inside of HR, but how do I develop a business case? How do I get the tools? There's so much going on about the technology and what HR departments need to do to not just get ahead. Let's not give them too much work. How about catch up? And that has nothing to do with the candidate experience as well. So a lot of people, I suspect, Ira, got a lot of good information from it. I know.
That's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear, and I already got the feedback. And as you've heard me say this, and I send this out all the time. I send out a speaker feedback to get a little bit more than what you typically get in conference. But this was one that Hugh Gallagher, who was a guest a few weeks ago as a recruiter, and he and I hosted. We're a partial host with this. We had Insperity hosted, was another sponsor of it. But I send out the speaker feedback, and some of the feedback I'm getting, which is the same as I get other places, is like, what did you like? What did you walk away from? Did this meet your expectations? Was there one point that you were able to implement right away? And then one of the questions is, what should we eliminate? Unfortunately, the feedback's good for the ego, but it's really not very good for my presentation because all of it was good. And I'm always looking for ways to cut out something because I've got way too much material. So, but I appreciate that feedback. But it also lines up really well with our guest today, Maja. Nice. And again, I'm really excited. I think it's May 9th. I will be speaking remotely to the Disrupt HR. That's how you and I met, Disrupt HR Lehigh Valley, just about 2 years ago, I guess. And Maja, through a mutual friend, invited me to speak at their Belgrade, Disrupt HR Belgrade. It's now international. So that should be fun. So I want to bring on Maja, and hopefully I didn't butcher this name too bad. Ninkovic, is that right?
Ninkovic, yeah, that's great.
Ninkovic, yeah, wonderful. Maja, welcome to Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure, and thank you for that introduction. That sounds really great, actually.
I'm honored to be part of that, and Michelle is a mutual friend, and she speaks so highly of you, and she couldn't wait to get us together. So, let's start out. Your company, and again, I may butcher this name as well. Is it Alathea?
Alathea, yeah.
Alathea, okay, got that. Alathea RNS. What is Alathea?
Alathea is actually from Greek, Alathea, which means truth. And so the company name, when it came time to actually come up with a company name, we were banging our heads and, thinking of all these, ways. And then we thought about, what is it exactly that we're doing? And we really did want to focus on research and how data informs strategy. And so, being truthful and being sort of honest about it and facing, the data and whatever message it may bring you, whether you like it or not, it was kind of, really important, for us internally and also as a message out into the world. So it is research and strategy, and it is about how data and people analytics and research can inform strategy, business strategy, and also internal HR strategies. So this is where it comes from.
So tell us, I could share with our listeners a little bit about your background, because most of your postgraduate education was in the U.S. I'm correct? I think Penn State and NYU.
Yes, well, I went and I went to London, I think, it was a long time ago, 94, I think. And that's where I finished my BA in psychology. And then I went to Penn State for, my master's, and then to New York for my graduate degree. So I've lived in the States for, good 10 years, I think. And then I came back, 9 years ago, and decided, to apply some of these things that I've done. And I don't come from a very traditional HR background. So, I come from social.
Well, that's the three of us. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is why, you're able to step out of it, and see it in terms of practices and in terms of, I come from critical social psychology background, which sort of makes you question everything. Why is this here, and why are you using this practice, and how is this practice, what are the implications of this practice, for the people in the organization. And so, I come from that perspective. And so bringing that psychology background into it, like you said in the introduction, it's like, how is ethnography finding its place in HR? How is, this sort of biometrics and eye tracking finding its place in HR? I think you need people who have these analytical skills, to enter into HR as consultants or as people inside organizations, so that they can bring these perspectives in and see what benefit they can get from all of these other external data that HR maybe doesn't usually think of when they think data collection.
Yeah, and that's just a great segue. This morning, I wake up with these like really, really weird ideas. So, one of the things that I wanted to, have a conversation about, and it was also from a personal reason, not only to share your talents and what you were doing, but it was also to kind of get a gauge of what are the issues in Serbia. In 3 weeks, I'm going to be talking to a group, and I wanted to pick a topic or focus on an issue that was also a problem over there, because at least in the U.S., it seems, and I've been speaking all around the country, everyone says, well, do you work in our industry? Like this is a unique talent problem only for specific industries? Or do you work in our region? Or do you understand what it's like to work in the Lehigh Valley or California or Texas or Missouri? So I guess one of my questions is, but this was the weird thing. I woke up this morning and go, I wonder how many miles we are from, and I'm not in Wind Gap right now, I mean, that's where I normally live, but it's like, how many miles away are we? So we're actually 4,556 miles away.
Okay.
Just to be precise. For a little trivia, yeah. So I'm not sure where we can use that, but except on the Geek Skeezers and Googleization show. But again, you were hosting Disrupt HR. What are the biggest challenges facing businesses when it comes to HR in Serbia?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I actually really need to sort of publicly thank you and announce you as a speaker on the event. And I have to tell you, built up quite a fan base here in Serbia.
Oh, good.
I think I may have mentioned, but I work with a lot of students, and when they heard that you'll be speaking on Disrupt, they researched everything that you've ever done online, every book that you've written, and so they sat down and they voted on what is the topic that they would like you to speak on, and they went through all and I think they decided on something. There's no HR app for that. I think that was really, really interesting, for them.
Oh, okay. We'll run with that one. Yeah, actually, I've that's molded a little bit of where things are, but it fits so well into this topic of user experience. And so I'm excited to get into there. So, but what are the issues? I mean, and all you hear about in the U.S. is this war for talent or a race for talent. People can't find talented people. Taking longer to hire people. The cost to hire people is going up. I mean, are these the same issues that the companies in Belgrade and in Serbia are facing?
Right. Well, let me tell you, Jennifer McClure she is the sort of mastermind behind Disrupt. And we had this initial conversation some months ago. And, I was preparing to tell her why is it that we want to organize a Disrupt HR event and, why I think it's important for Serbia and all of this. So, I told her that we're sort of, in this really interesting transition phase, that in Serbia, we see this sort of wave of transformation coming, and there's simply just not enough, people to sort of hold up that transformation, right? And so we wanted to organize Disrupt HR as, a kind of, a sort of fire, to sort of ignite it in, this population here, so that we can actually share some of the more innovative, sort of modern approaches to HR. And, funnily, she said, well, that's exactly what all of the Disrupt HR organizers around the world tell us, is that they are ready for a change. And then, it really got me thinking is that, Serbia is in a particular situation, but I think that these changes are more global than just Serbia. Our particular flavor of change is a little bit different because we came out of socialism, and then year 2000 brought about all of these, sort of political and economical changes that, multinational corporations brought their practices, the sort of Western HR management knowledge and all of that kind of stuff. But, before we had a chance to actually catch up with that, digitalization came in, right? And so all of a sudden, even these practices were not modern enough, were not sort of good enough to solve these problems. And so now we had, a force of these HR professionals not quite sure what they're supposed to do next, because the old methods and the old ways of doing things were not working. Administrative HR wasn't working, these kind of analog ways of solving today's problems were not working, but they didn't quite know where to turn for information on what to do next. And I think this is not a particularly Serbian problem, if you know what I mean. I think that this is a larger, a global problem that deals with the idea that business environment has changed so drastically. And the way that HR has been sort of dealing with these issues has not, and it hasn't really caught up maybe just yet. And so I think we're at various points in transformation, and I don't know, I haven't been, working directly with, companies in the States for 10 years, so I'm not sure exactly where they are. But
it hasn't gotten much better for a lot of companies, unfortunately. That's the opening. Well, Keith can attest to this. My opening slide shows a typewriter and it shows a bunch of people on mobile phones. And I'm saying the candidate's perception of the recruitment experience is the typewriter.
Yeah.
Where they're trying to respond to the HR person who's still punching a keyboard. So.
Yeah. I think and this is why Disrupt, and this is why trying to share all of these sort of best practices, innovative practices, to show somebody that yes, it's actually possible, and it does require a change. It does require organizational change, and it requires a sort of leadership change. And I think this is the most important thing is that, we've been working with a lot of clients, and, at the first meeting, you can actually tell whether the people analytics program, whatever it is, whether it's a small project dealing, with just, some sort of logistics of candidate experience, or it's a large project like introducing a data-driven system, you can tell immediately, whether it's going to be successful by the amount of that initial kind of buy-in, and if that's not there, it's an uphill struggle, and it really, it just not as successful as it could be, if you have people who are more open to this kind of new way, I guess, of looking at things.
So when a company calls you, let's get back to some basics here, because people are still all over the board, people analytics. I can hear, many of the clients, saying, oh, we're a small company, we're private, we're thinking about doing this. Why does a company, call Alathea? Why do they bring you in that you have that first assessment, that first meeting?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that people call us for, and I love it, that's our preferred, way is to come and address a very specific problem and a very specific issue. So people would have problems, I don't know, with motivation, or they would have problems with recruitment, or they would have problems, with engagement, or, whatever it is that, that you can identify as a problem. And we like to start from the problem itself. Somebody just recently asked me, it's like, do you have a catalog of your services? And I said, well, not really, because, a catalog sort of implies that you are going to know what you're going to do when you get to the organization. And I think we come at it from a very different way. It's like, okay, let's look at the problem and let's see which methodology will get us to answer that question. What is in the background of the problem? It's like, why is the problem there, right? And so, we're trying to generate, insights and metrics that will help us then come up with suggestions on how to address the issue and how to, move the organization past that issue or the problem.
Maja, are you seeing any trends with regard to your client base where they could use the most help or what they're looking for?
Hey, Keith, we're still getting a little bit of a breakup with that. We heard it, but I'm not sure where that's coming from. But back to you, Maja.
Yeah, sure. The issues. Well, yeah. We work a lot here with the IT industry, and things have moved because I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, one of the biggest issues in the IT industry wasn't actually attraction; it was actually selection. And so people were coming up with all these different methods. How do we best select the person, for the job? Are we going to do assessment centers, or we're going to do, some kind of psychological assessments, or we're going to do some standardized assessment, or whatever it is. And we've seen a huge move away from that into attraction. And so, this is very specific for the IT market because the market has become extremely competitive. And so now the biggest challenge for companies is actually to even attract people to get people to even look at their ads, to get people to even go to their career sites, to even begin that sort of application process. And so I think that that's one of the things that we've seen as a trend. Some of the other things, let me think for a second. I think some companies are starting to understand that there are things that they previously thought to be unmeasurable and sort of, intangible. But now with all of these new methodologies that we have, they're actually understanding that we can measure things like trust, and that we can actually map people's relationships within the organization. We can generate some insights about things that were previously kind of like a black box. It's like you go into the organization and you can, you have your engagement survey and, you have maybe some, metrics in the HR department, but everything else that dealt with like real human interactions, like the messy things, that people do every day, that was thought of as something that you can't really, sort of put data on that. But that's changing a little bit, and that's not entirely true. And some of our best studies have been qualitative studies where we would go in, and talk to people and interview people and do focus groups and observe. And in this kind of culture of big data, I think that I have been sort of pulling back in the other direction, saying, well, yeah, big data is great, and it definitely has its purpose, but let's focus on what some of these people are calling small data, right? These are kind of small observations that give you a very deep insight into organizational culture that you can't really get from a survey, that you can't really get from quantitative data. So, I can give you an example of this. I was just thinking in preparation, we went to this manufacturing company and, they had issues with employee motivation and absenteeism. And, so we walked into the company and we had this, initial meeting with the directors, and they gave us their version of the story. So, we went to the manufacturing floor, and the first question that we were asking, upstairs with the directors meeting is, well, do you guys actually have, any way of listening to what your employees are telling you? Do you have any way for them to give you suggestions, to give you, some improvements? What are some of the ways that you're collecting, this feedback from your employees? And this is, oh, yeah, we have this, this program. It's called, a suggestion box, and it's over there, and the workers are supposed to, go in and put their suggestions. So we walk, downstairs into the manufacturing room, and we go into their, main lunch area, and we see the suggestion box. It's sitting right on top of the cupboard, covered with 2 inches of dust. And it's like completely inaccessible from everybody. You would need, a ladder to get up there. And so, but that was the point. That was that kind of, little bit of small data that immediately told us, okay, so this is what we're dealing with, and this is how we can now structure our interviews and focus groups to see why is this box covered with 2 inches of dust? Why is it not being used? And, so I'm sorry, I lost, my
So Maja, you asked at the beginning, right before we went on the show, you said, hey, I wasn't sure how we were going to have enough conversation for now. We're more than halfway through. I haven't even gotten to some of the questions I really, really want to ask you. But we need to take a break. We got a 2-minute break coming up. So I want to remind everybody you're listening to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. Our guest today is Maja Ninkovic from Alathea RNS. She's talking all the way from Belgrade, Serbia, and we are talking about people analytics and the disruption in HR. And the one lesson that we've gotten so far by this conversation is that talent, the race for talent and talent management is a global problem. It's not your industry. It's not regional. It's not just in your state, in your county, in your city. It is global, and we've got a lot more to cover. So we're going to take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, JobVite and Success Performance Solutions. Stay right where you are. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
Behind everything you're searching for is something you're actually looking for. When you search with the real Yellow Pages, you get more than a contractor. You get a whole new curb appeal. It's not just getting directions to a dry cleaner with YP.com. It's rescuing an old favorite from the back of the closet. And it's more than finding a locksmith with YP.com on your mobile. It's getting to sleep in your own bed. Whatever it might be, there are more ways to search and more ways to find exactly what you're looking for with the Real Yellow Pages, YP.com, and YP.com on your mobile, only from AT&T.
What's up, everyone? This is Keith from the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, powered by JobVite. JobVite knows career paths are made by people, not by open job requisitions. JobVite's platform ties recruitment marketing directly to applicant tracking and onboarding, creating continuous candidate engagement that effectively connects recruiters with qualified passive candidates. Used by over 50,000 recruiters placing over 1 million jobs, JobVite's platform impacts every company in every industry. Check us out at jobvite.com.
Listen carefully. Up to 9 out of 10 job candidates visiting your company career page leave before completing an application. You heard that right. 90% of candidates who want to apply for a job at your company don't. That's just plain crazy, especially in today's tight labor market. Candidate experience matters. Stop turning candidates away. Let Success Performance Solutions help. Call us at 800-803-4303 or register at successperformancesolutions.com/W4CY. Schedule a no-obligation consultation and get special access to insider tips to recruit faster and hire smarter.
Hey, welcome back to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show. I'm Ira Wolf. I'm here with my co-host today, Keith Campagna, and our very special guest from way across the pond, as we said, 4,555 miles away, Maja Ninkovic from Alathea RNS. Going to be not over in Serbia in a couple weeks, but I'm going to be speaking there through satellite, I guess, or through the internet at the Disrupt HR. Hey, Maja, when you left off, you shared an example of how sometimes it's not the qualitative or the quantitative results you get from analytics, but sometimes it's the quality. Of hiding a suggestion box on top of a refrigerator or in a cabinet, of why, you make it difficult. In my presentation, and, when I talk, and Keith's heard about this, a million times already, and this is where I spend my time, is some basic things. I mean, it's the quality of the candidate experience that is turning good candidates away. Silly things that companies do, like hiding. Not only do they hide a suggestion box, but they sort of hide their career site. Yeah. They make it. If somebody goes up to their company website, it's almost impossible to find out how to apply, to find what job openings they have, or if you find the job opening, of finding the apply button or getting through the application. And there's a whole host of things of being mobile responsive and being fast and getting found on the internet. But you're basically taking this to a completely other level. And I think when I opened the show, I said, when would you think that we would be talking about one is just user experience in HR, but talking about things like eye tracking and user video graphics and ethnographics. Talk about that a little bit. What is it? I mean, I have a good idea what it is because it's like that. To me, that's common in digital marketing. I mean, that's the world today. But how would that affect HR? I mean, how is what you're doing impacting people's ability to engage more talent?
I think this is the point that HR has to now adopt some new skills and some new roles, because we are, dealing with a fully digital and fully transparent, world where, your candidates are sharing their impressions, good or bad, with lots of people personally, but also with lots of people digitally. And so HR has to focus on something called employer branding and user experience on their career sites, especially because of this idea that you have to attract people. And when you attract people, you also have to tailor the content to the actual user, right? So, I mean, what's the point of creating, a career website if what it does, it, frustrates users and it's not intuitive, or or it's not, or the main information is really difficult to find. So I think that, in a way, HR has to have some basic awareness of these digital marketing concepts. The other day I was talking to a client, and they say, well, where do you get all of these, funnels? When we talk about candidate experience, so we talk about attraction, and we talk about consideration, and we talk about, then selection and hiring. It's like, where do you get these concepts? And, I try to explain to them that, recruiting has, borrowed all of these things from sales, because recruitment has actually become a sales activity. You have to attract people, right? And you have to get them to the top of the funnel. And where user experience, sort of comes in is that in the same way that you would design a product for your end user, that's the same way in which HR has to design content that, fits your end users, which are these potential candidates for your jobs. So user experience is very important, and we're going to have at the Disrupt HR Belgrade, we're going to have a person talk about design thinking, which is a methodology that fits right into that. This is the kind of user-centered methodology that's normally used in product design and create innovation. But I think it can also help us in designing a better HR function, because it's oriented towards end users. It is looking at, what kind of information do candidates need at each one of those, touch points, and then providing it to them so that, the experience is actually something that's satisfying rather than frustrating. So that's, I think, where that whole user experience. And eye tracking is just, another methodology and another tool that we've been using to do that. I haven't had much success actually doing, putting that service out in the market, because people still, I think, are having problems connecting. It's like, what is eye tracking doing with? But if you think about that, eye tracking is used very successfully in evaluating usability of websites, banking systems, all of these kinds of different, website content. And in the same way that, they're trying to sell a service, HR is also trying to sell, their employer brand, and eye tracking can help in telling you whether you have satisfied user needs or not.
So it's not been used successfully in HR, but how has it successfully been used in business? So if somebody was looking at getting more traffic or more usability or longer engagement of a customer on their site, how would they use that?
Yeah, well, eye tracking is part is a methodology that helps you evaluate where your customers or end users, where is the focus of their visual attention. So you measure their visual attention as they're browsing, as they're going through your site. And there's different metrics that you can use within eye tracking, but duration of gaze. So for example, where do your customers look at? What part of your website catches their attention the most, right? And then you have different metrics like, something that's a sequence of fixation. So what do they see first? What is it that attracts their attention first? Where do they go next? And so there are, within an eye tracking methodology, there are, certain kind of patterns. It's like when people are confused, they tend to look back and forth, because they don't know. So, and then it's when you introduce a qualitative sort of aspect of that methodology. Is you say, okay, we've identified that you had a problem here, or you looked here longer than you've looked at other parts of the page, or there are parts of the page that you've never looked at, So if we're trying to get people to do something on websites, which is, what usually our goal is, if they never look at that button, if they never look at your, logo or brand image or whatever it is that you want them, then there is a design issue that you need to address. And so then we ask people as part of the methodology, okay, so, did you experience a problem here and why? And usually, people are very, articulate, and they say, yeah, because, I was looking at this button, but then it didn't lead me to where I wanted it to lead me. And so you can iron out a lot of these design issues and usability issues with websites. And so we're hoping to transfer that methodology to candidate experience also.
Yeah. So I'm an employer, and I've got a couple hundred employees. We're doing, we're doing pretty well on getting people to come to my website, but it seems that we don't get a lot of people to apply after they get there. There's a lot of abandonment. What's the process? What do you do first when you're evaluating a situation? And I'm presenting as a hypothetical, but that's pretty common that people say, "Hey, we got a lot of visitors, but no one seems to want to apply." What's your process? What do you do?
Right. Well, first of all, we would get, the relevant target group, because it's really important to select exactly the right people. You would have to sort of define who is your target group and who would you actually like to test, I should say. And then, there's sort of two parts of that story. One is one part of the story. Eye tracking is not, it's a great methodology, but, it should also be used for very specific issues. The other part of the story is the web analytics. So we would like to see, where candidates drop off, which part of the application process is actually the most problematic. And so I think the eye tracking methodology in that is really sort of more useful in telling you why.
Yeah, and I wasn't necessarily specific to the eye tracking in that case, but it was just more general, saying, sure. What would be what's the approach? And it sounds like it's pretty similar to what I'm talking about is getting the web analytics. And a lot of companies don't even know. I mean, one of the questions I ask consistently is, companies know how many applications they have, or HR, maybe somebody knows a little bit more, but HR knows how many applications they have. They don't know how many got started. So is there a problem with their application? And they rarely know how many people actually come and visit their site.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. And these conversion rates are actually, quite problematic. But I think, again, this brings me back to the point. You have to talk to people. You actually have to talk to real people and to ask them, okay, so what was the problem? Because web analytics and the quantitative data from conversion rates and so forth, they can give you the signal that something is wrong, right? They signal that, there is a problem in your funnel, there is a problem in your application process, but they won't really tell you why. And so, this part of the research that we do is it allows you to talk to actual people who have tried to do that, or to, people who are simulating trying to do that, right? The target group. But it will tell you exactly, it's like, okay, what is my thought process? I went here, maybe they asked me, I don't know, maybe they asked me to, enter information twice. This is what, usually happens in these application forms. I already sent you a CV and now you're making me, go.
That's the qualitative. The qualitative, it's not a quantitative, it's a qualitative. So.
It's the yes, exactly. It's qualitative. You have to talk to people, because I think in HR, and I think generally, this coming from an academic sort of perspective, there's not so much sort of crossover, or there's a little bit of an overlap. But, on the academic side, you have a lot of studies dealing with the ways in which people make decisions, and what kinds of things go into decision making. And it's not always maybe all that rational, and it doesn't make sense. And, the way people make decisions is kind of messy sometimes, and, very irrational, and, not easy to predict. And then on the other, side, you have this sort of practice, the HR profession that doesn't quite always, borrow from that work, and so we assume that people make decisions in a much more, kind of rational way. And I think that that's where people analytics can also help, HR practitioners, is saying, okay, people do make decisions sometimes out of these really completely, these irrational reasons that we can't quite, account for in our usual everyday work. But if you look at it, you can find some patterns, and then you can tailor your content, and you can tailor your processes, to sort of account for that, and to be more user friendly in a way.
And we're almost at the end of the show. So amazing. I mean, and we're barely scratching the surface. Yeah, barely scratching the surface here. So how can, and again, although you're halfway around the world, it's a global world, and we're talking to you here. How can someone get in touch with you? What's the best way? I know you're on LinkedIn, but how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, website, email. That's fine.
And your website is
Alathea.io.
Okay, and that's ALATHEA.io.
Yeah.
And Ninkovic, NINKOVIC. If you want to look her up on there, that'd be great. So let me ask you, I've asked most of our guests this. We have you back on the show next April. Year from now, what are we going to be talking about? Are we going to be talking about the same stuff, or do you think it's going to be different or better? What are we going to be talking about?
That's a good question. I think that we're gonna be talking a little bit more about the extent to which analytics has entered, the sort of mainstream, because we can see signs everywhere, and this is the situation more globally. But I think that I hope that we'll be talking about, the ways in which corporations here have actually opened their doors more to HR analytics, and not just in terms of the sort of usual HR metrics, but to some more interesting studies and to some more interesting applications of analytics, to inform the way that they deal with their business strategy, as well as the way that they deal with their employees and candidates.
Any major disruptions you see coming down the pike?
Major disruptions.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything insignificant that either excites you or worries you, as far as analytics?
As far as analytics, well, I can see, as I said, I can see the potential of big data, entering the field. And I see the potential of, the sort of really sort of high end technologies entering the processes. And this is something that I've actually been very curious, about when we talked about what you're going to, present at Disrupt, because I think that's something that we're not quite sure what are all of these possibilities for technologies to do in the recruitment space and in the HR space. And I am a little bit worried, it's like, I am a little bit worried about that, because I think people have this sort of grand vision of what that can do for a business. And, I think that you have to have the fundamentals right. Just like we talked about, you have to have the fundamental process down, and then you can use all this technology to maybe make it easier for you to do it. But, I'm a little, that's something that maybe is a question mark, for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's, to me, that's great advice. And that was a topic, that was actually the title of our program yesterday, Keeping Recruitment Human, and presenting the SHRM annual meeting in Las Vegas in a couple of weeks. And it's keeping the H in HR. And they're all variations of that. There's no app for that. It's companies have not done a really good job of good customer service in the talent management arena, the user experience, but then they reverted to using technology as the solution, and that's made it less human. And I think that addresses what you're talking about. So we've been talking with Maja Ninkovic from Alathea RNS, all the way from Serbia, talking about people analytics, the future of work, the future of HR, and it's been great having you, Maja. I know you and I will be probably talking a little bit over the next 2 weeks in preparation for Disrupt HR. Congratulations on your hosting that. I'm really excited about participating, and I'm honored to appreciate that, and honored you were agreed to be part of our show. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Happy to host you. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, good. So, Keith, what's on your agenda this week ahead?
Well, actually, I have kind of a down week. I'm doing that good old-fashioned R&R towards the end of the week, but More to come next week, Ira. There's a whole. You caught me in a week where I have not much going on other than the good old fashioned.
Good.
Get out there, sharing the
so Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization was the culmination of 2 days of hearing me yesterday of keeping recruitment and this. So
sharpening the saw. Sharpening the saw.
Yeah, we wore you out. So appreciate it. So anyway, we will, it's kind of a wrap again. Here's the Geeks, Geezers, and Googleization show. We bring you topics and thought leaders discussing a future of work where the tired, the wired, and technology converge. We certainly talked a lot about that today. Until next Wednesday and every Wednesday after that, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, W4CY.com, and on your favorite podcast platform, iTunes, Google Play, iHeart, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever it is. This show will be live hopefully by the end of the week, and you'll be able to hear all about people analytics, Disrupt HR, hear from Maja Ninkovic, and I'm your host, Ira Wolf, with my co-host, Keith Capagna. Don't let the shift hit your plans.